Hey everyone, long time no see, and welcome back to Ameritech Talks. I'm Christina, Growth and Community Manager here at Ameritech. Today's episode is a special one. We're talking all things AI and the future of intelligence, and I couldn't be more thrilled about our guest. Joining us first is Graham Morehead, CEO of Pangeon and professor at Gonzaga University. Graham brings a powerful mix of academic depth and real world vision to the AI space, and we're excited to hear his thoughts on where AI is headed. Graham, we're so glad to have you here. To kick things off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to this path of AI?
So I grew up the son of a neurologist and a language teacher. My mother taught French, English, Spanish, and studied Arabic. And my father was Air Force. So we lived all over for a while. I was always fascinated by language and the brain. And I had that from both of my parents. And then later I decided to study physics, but in my last semester, I took an AI course. This is back in 1995. And I thought, this is too interesting. I have to do this instead. And I never stopped. I've been working with AI since the 90s. And that brings me here to today. And I teach it at Gonzaga. And I'm the CEO of Pangeon. I'm the CTO of Topology. And I work with a couple of other companies, like a company called Pure Cipher that's using AI in Florida for some government needs. And I'm all about that.
Thank you, Graham. Fascinating already. And now, before we dive into our core discussion, I also want to welcome someone you may already know, our very own Greg Ross, CEO of Ameritech. Greg has been
Good to
leading
see
our
you.
efforts to.
Good to see
Okay,
you.
Greg. Thank you, Greg. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Finally, would you like to say a few words before you get started?
Yeah, I just want to say how interesting this is to be talking to Graham. He and I met each other as we were rolling out the Edge AI certification, which we're working on. And he's a supporter of what we do at Ameritech, our mission. So, Graham, I'm on the edge of my seat to hear some of your answers to these questions, the future of AI. This is all fascinating stuff. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yay! So let's start with something big and foundational. AI systems are demonstrating more and more complex behaviors, from creative writing to reasoning through problems. How do you think of understanding of intelligence might evolve in years ahead?
So we have this word, intelligence. Intuitively, we all think we know what it means. But have we ever really given it a formal definition, a specific, clear definition? Some people think intelligence requires consciousness, being aware, being able to feel. Like it's like something to be me. I know what it's like to be me, but it's not like anything to be a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee doesn't have any consciousness. It's just made out of coffee and water and whatever ceramics. Take a rock. A rock, I believe, is not conscious. But you take that same rock, break it down to its silicon and other elements, make it into a computer. Now people think it's conscious. Some people do. I do not. I would like to separate out intelligence from awareness and consciousness. And you can see this in people. Dr. Anil Seth is a researcher who talks about one of his patients. This girl was born with no cortex, none of the stuff up here in the cortex. She has a brain stem, basic maybe cerebellum, but no cortex. She has zero intelligence, literally zero. She's not smart enough to have food in her plate and bring it to her mouth to eat when she's hungry. She doesn't have even that level of intelligence. But if you place her little brother in her arms, her face lights up. She is aware. She has consciousness and awareness, but zero intelligence. A computer is the opposite. An AI, like the ones you use, they have intelligence, but zero consciousness. It's not like anything to be that computer. If you turn it off or tell you're going to turn it off forever, it's not going to be sad. It might say things like the phrase, I'm sad, please don't do it. But that's only because we've trained it on AI movies and movie scripts and books and all of this stuff. We basically trained it on the whole internet. Intelligence, therefore, we have to define it. And I would define intelligence as a number of different things. But one thing intelligence is, it's a way to take input and give the right output. You have a question, you ask AI on any topic that any human has written about on the internet. And GPT, Llama, DeepSeek, they tend to give you a good answer. And you got to think about it like an idiot savant. This entity has read and remembers the whole internet and gives a reasonable response without knowing what the words mean. It's really good at putting the right words together, but it doesn't know what they mean. And there's another example I like to give that points to this idea. Huskies and wolves. Huskies are beautiful dogs. They kind of look like wolves. If you look at a face of a husky or just a picture of a husky or a picture of a wolf, they're not that dissimilar. Somebody trained an AI to classify huskies from wolves, and it was 99.9% accurate. And you thought, wow, what a great AI model. It can look at a picture of a husky or a wolf and determine with high accuracy what it is. Someone went a step further and they probed into the model, not just to get the answer, but to try to get at why it got that answer. And the way they did this was they figured out which part of the image the AI was looking at. Because the AI wasn't looking everywhere evenly. It was focusing on a certain part of the image. It was focusing on the snow in the background. It was classifying wolves based on the snow in the background of the image. It wasn't looking at the animal. Now, it got the right answer. So do you really care? Yes, you care, because it was getting the right answer for the wrong reason, which at some point, it's going to give you the wrong answer and you're not going to be able to depend on it. It wasn't even looking at the animal. Now, when you think about GPT, what is the snow in the background? It's much harder to describe and put your finger on, but it is there. GPT is giving you the text that an intelligent human would have given you if they had answered your question, without knowing what any of the words mean. In fact, from GPT's perspective, every one of those words isn't even a word. It represents it as numbers, and it doesn't know what those numbers connect to. When you give it the word cat, it doesn't know that cat is an animal. It doesn't even know what animals are.
Graham,
Good.
Graham, I just want to jump in for a second. That's really interesting. And I've heard about people talking about this in the past. They talk about tokens and how it reads tokens. Why is that? Why does it operate that way? Can you just explain that to us? Why does it do that?
Over the years, people have tried tens of thousands, millions of different things in AI. Less than 0.1% of them actually work, and those are the ones you hear about. Every step in AI is built on something that came before. And these new models that everyone knows and uses now, they're all based on something called transformers, which was based on previous work. And the short answer is, we tried a bunch of stuff. This is the thing that worked. You're not hearing about the 10,000 ideas that did not work. Now, in order to make it work, what they had to do is they had to have a way of translating what we know of as words into a language that computers can understand. And the language of computers is numbers. What's interesting here is there's two kinds of AI. There's the kind of AI that takes numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4 that are discrete and separate from each other and can do logic on those things. There's also the kind of AI that's more fuzzy. And you think about all the numbers between 1 and 2, like 1.00000019734. That's one of the infinite numbers between 1 and 2, right? All those numbers, we call that continuous math. that's fuzzy. It's not clear and precise, it's fuzzy. That's how AI likes to operate, at least the AI that everybody is using now. And what they do is they take these clear ideas that we have, like cat, dog, hamburger, house, coffee, and they convert them into the fuzzy space. In the fuzzy space, AI does an immense amount of math. And when I say immense, I mean billions and billions of these large number calculations. And what amazes all of us and was a big surprise was that it works so well. We did not know it was going to work so well. And we make it render to us like words, not the numbers, because we understand words. So it goes back and forth between the fuzzy numbers and the clear, precise words. Now, when it gets the wrong answer, you can't go inside it and figure out why. It's not intelligent in the way that, a human learns to be intelligent. Where a child, if you're teaching a child how to do something, afterwards you can say, no, you got the wrong answer. What was your thought process? And it tells you the thought process, and you correct your child or your students on their thought process. GPT, you can ask it its thought process. It will give you an answer. It has nothing to do with its actual thought process. Nothing at all to do with it. Training GPT is like training a wild animal. It will do the right thing until it does the wrong thing. If you train your tiger to do the right thing and your tiger is doing great, and then one day you think, I'm going to add a cute little rabbit to my routine. And you and the tiger and the rabbit, you're doing your thing, and you turn your back for 1 second and the rabbit's gone. The tiger will do the right thing until it does the wrong thing. And there's no why. You can't talk logic to a tiger. You can't talk logic to an LLM, a large language model. But intelligence is being able to take in some input and give an intelligent answer, or an answer that a human would say is intelligent. That's one kind of intelligence. There's many kinds, but that's probably a good starting point. And AI can do that. AI is artificially intelligent.
Wow, that's such a powerful point. It really challenges us to think beyond just IQ or processing power. Yeah, thank you. So now, as these systems evolve, they become more powerful. They're also becoming harder to understand, even for the people who build them, right? So we often hear about the black box problem in AI. What do you think are the best ways we can ensure transparency and interpretability, especially when AI is making decisions in healthcare, finance, or law?
So it's a big deal, but it's a lot like other problems that we face. Let's pretend you're Jerome Powell, the chief of the Federal Reserve Bank in the US, and somebody comes up and asks you, why did eggs increase in price by 15 cents at this specific store in Cleveland, Ohio? How is he supposed to answer that question? He usually looks at large numbers, like how many people are employed, how many people become unemployed this month, what the average increase in pay is, what the price of a commodity is average nationwide. But to get to the why of those answers, you have to see, okay, let's say the average price of gas is because you have, hundreds of thousands of gas stations across the country, and you take those numbers and average them. So now you have 100,000 questions to answer. You go to each of them. Why did you set your price to this value on this day? And then they may give you an answer that has to do with, well, we got 10,000 customers a month come through here on the highway, and we saw a drop in sales and our costs have increased this much, so we made that choice. And then you have another, 10,000 questions to answer. Why did those customers not stop and get gas, or did stop and get gas? Why did they not buy a slushie this time? Why did they do this? And every one of those little questions leads to 10,000 more questions. So if you're Jerome Powell and you wanted to answer the question of why did the price of eggs go up by 20 cents at this store in Cleveland, Ohio on this given day, you'd spend the rest of 10 lifetimes answering that one question. It's the same level of complexity to ask, why did the AI give this word first, and then this word second, and then this word third when I asked it a question? In fact, the number of little calculations that depends on is more than what Jerome Powell would have to answer. Jerome Powell is only dealing with 320 million Americans, right? But the average model has billions of parameters. So these AIs, we have a general idea of, okay, we use this technique, we learned it, then we use this technique for a few years, we learned it, and we built on that, We have these methods of construction that we trust. And if we use those methods of construction and let it loose in the data, after a lot of training, it seems to do the right thing a lot. We will never have good visibility internally. Now we're trying with things like probing methods, but the truth is these black boxes will be black boxes.
And Graham, that's part of what makes it exciting, right? You have a black box that works correctly and gives you the right answer to something. That's exciting. It's thrilling. It's like magic when it happens, but it can also go wrong, right? It can give you the wrong answer on something. And when it does, that can be deeply troubling, right? It can have real consequences.
Consequences of people's lives. And you don't want to have someone be thrown in jail because the AI just said so. Trust me, bro. You can't just do trust me, bro. So we have to have companion systems that are a different kind of AI. You see, there's been an argument going on in AI since the 1950s. And we now would call it, type 1 and type 2. But back then they would have called it connectionism versus symbolics. So connectionism says, oh, let's just take a million little programs. They're all going to pretend to be brain cells, put them together, and it'll just emerge. Don't worry. It just gets smart on its own. You don't have to worry about the details. That's the black box. We're just going to trust me, bro. The other side is logic. And they're like, it's going to take time for us to build this system. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more hand holding. We have to teach it. We have to think about the why. But when it gets an answer, we can trace back and it's explainable and we know why. Now, what I think is going to happen is that we're going to use the fuzzy type 1 system to make better type 2 systems, and back and forth and back and forth. But for explainability, we have to know the why, and you can't depend on a black box for that. There are people who are trying to, but they're going to fail because of the sheer size of the possible states that black box could have.
Exactly. So transparency isn't just a technical challenge, it's also an ethical one. So especially when lives or rights are at stake, explainability, as you mentioned, really matters. And now let's bring it closer to home, to me, and to us. So at Ameritech, we're working with Ukrainian engineers and students who are just beginning their journey to AI. What changes would you recommend for our education system, both in Ukraine and globally, probably United States, to help prepare this next generation for a future deeply shaped by AI?
Great question.
So think about the word computer in English. It used to refer to a person. It was a job. You could be a computer. And if a person was a computer, they were, for instance, working at a grocery store. Someone comes in with their items, they give them some money, and then they compute the change. And they're doing a lot of subtraction, addition, and maybe multiplication. And that was a respected, well-paid profession for a time. We replaced them with cash registers. Now, this also preceded having calculators in school. Imagine if you're a math teacher and now your students don't need you because they have calculators. Do you even teach math anymore? People who were computers had an amazing ability to do math in their head. almost no one can do that now, except for a few people who just love to dive into that, or maybe they're autistic geniuses. But most people have lost that ability. We've actually let that part of our brain get weaker. I also think about, if you look at a taxi driver in London, they have to go through a rigorous testing process where you give them any address and any other address, and they have to tell you how they got from one to the other using just their memory, without GPS, without Google Maps. And the part of the brain that manages location is bigger than the average person. For the rest of us, when I was young, we had to use maps. We had to know where we were going. We don't anymore. I use Google Maps all the time, and I'm sure that part of my brain has gotten weaker and it's smaller. So my brain is atrophying in some sense, but I'm so much more productive. I don't spend any more time getting lost. I don't get lost at all anymore. I go right to where I'm supposed to go to. Now, apply this to education. You got calculators coming into school, and at first teachers were very reluctant, saying, we can't have calculators in school because students won't learn how to do math anymore. What we decided to do was to go up the chain of complexity. We did have to do some math by paper just to make sure we understood the idea, but we spent less time on that. By the time I was in high school, we were actually required to have a graphing calculator, so we could do calculus. And there were things we were doing in calculus that we probably would never have gotten to if we hadn't used the calculator as a tool to springboard forward. Now, I'm hoping the same thing happens with language. Now that we have AI that can write your papers and do your homework for you, I still want my students to do their own work, but I want them to leverage AI, because school is about getting us prepared for life. And in real life, we need to be using AI to make products faster. So if you have to make a website, or you have to make a tool, or have to compute some function, you could spend 6 to 8 hours writing that function and getting it just right. Or you could spend 5 seconds having AI generate the first draft, and then you make some adjustments. But you can't make those adjustments unless you understand what the function was meant to do in the first place. So we still have to have that understanding. But the way I see this future, it's going to be one where students do the work learning how it works on their own first, but very quickly leaning on AI to do the next version, and they become managers of that process. That's how I see it.
Graham, you just reminded me of a post I saw on LinkedIn today, and I shared it. And actually, I saw a very similar post on your LinkedIn feed, but I think it was MIT did a study of brain activity from people that had been using AI. And I think what they found, like one of the results that they found was that, or the outcomes was that people who learned initially first to do it themselves and then used AI were able to achieve massively better results than those who learned first using AI. Is that kind of similar to what you're saying here? Yeah.
Yes. If someone never learned how to do long division and they only used calculators from the beginning, they wouldn't have that mental model, and they would be forever mentally stunted. Now, there are people who say that, in the early 1900s, every college student had to learn Greek and Latin, and we don't have to do that anymore, and we're mentally stunted. Who knows? Maybe we are. Maybe we're all mentally stunted in some way.
Could be.
Well, that's inspiring. I love the focus on creativity, critical thinking, cross-disciplinary skills. Yeah. So it's not just about coding, it's about knowing how to think in AI first world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about policy. With AI moving so fast, how should governments and international organizations respond? What's the right balance between fostering innovation and keeping society safe?
So the challenge to think about is that this is a race. Just to set the stakes, we're talking about getting to something called super intelligence, artificial super intelligence. This would mean something more intelligent than Einstein, more intelligent than the most intelligent human. So let's say we have this. Let's say we had a virtual Einstein. We got there first. We go to Einstein. Einstein's like, hey, what's up? How you doing? We're like, hey, Einstein, how you doing? He's like, so what are we doing today? And we're like, Einstein, we're interested in, anti-gravity, time travel, figuring out, some space flight things, some energy things, fusion reactors. You give them a whole list of problems, maybe the top 1,000 problems that affect humanity, cure cancer, do this, that, and the other. And we'd like you to go do 10,000 years of research, figure out what the next physics theories are. And since you're virtual, you can live 10,000 years very rapidly. So he goes off. 2 minutes later, he comes back. All right, I've done 10,000 years of research. Here's fusion energy reactors. Here's the cure for all your cancers. Here's a whole bunch of other things. What do we do next? Once you get to that point, you can then tell him to make an even smarter version of himself. Smarter version. So whoever gets to artificial superintelligence first, there's no points for second place. We don't want that kind of power in the hands of a dictator.
Yes.
Now, we have a lot of people who are trying hard to develop our AI. We're definitely working hard on. We're doing well, but we're not working as hard as, let's say, China. They have more people. They're spending more money on their AI startups than we do. They have considerably more energy. And it really is all about the energy right now. AI uses a lot of electricity. We have maybe a third of the energy China does. And they're going to more than double. And we're going to barely double in the next 5 years. We're going to try, but we're not getting there fast enough. A lot of people say World War II was won by the side that had more energy. We had more access to oil, more energy, more ability to make steel, for instance. That's why we won. The next stage of the future of the world is going to be about the power we use to drive our AI and how efficient that AI is. And things do not look great. They're okay, but we have to fight hard to stay just barely ahead. Now, the one person in the world who really wants the US to have good legislation that, sets restrictions on our AI is Xi Jinping. He's all for us having those restrictions and regulations. Now,
Sure.
we do want some kind of regulation, but we need to think about this like electricity. Electricity does hurt people. There are people who die, hundreds at least in this country, maybe even thousands, die from some kind of electrical shock or some electrical tool that landed on them or hurt them in some way. Electricity hurts people. But should we get rid of it? No. Electricity saves more lives than it hurts. It is a net benefit. In 1899, you're a small company, small business somewhere in America. Maybe you're making leather goods or putting, shoe horses on. You don't need electricity. You're fine. You can still make money without electricity. But by 1999, just 100 years later, every small business, unless you're Amish, every small business in America, every employee is using electricity every second of every day, even while they sleep. The same thing is going to be true for AI very soon. Every employee of every company is going to use AI every second of every day, even while they sleep. That's the future we're trying to get to. When we try to regulate things, we typically just make it more expensive for us to advance. I personally believe there's regulations you might want to put on big companies, but no regulations on small companies.
Very interesting.
That's such a nuanced take. So striking the right balance is tricky, but if we get it wrong, the consequences should be massive, or we're slowing down innovation that could really help people. Fascinating. Graham,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Christina, if I may, I just want to ask Graham really quickly before we kind of wrap up this podcast. It's been fascinating, Graham, and I wish we had a lot more time to talk to you because you have so many insights into AI and where the future's headed. Where can people go, Graham, if they want to hear more of your thoughts, insights, if they want to learn a little bit more about you, connect with you on social media? Where can they go to connect with you?
So I've sometimes I put up videos on YouTube. There's a Pangeon channel. There's a Pangeon LinkedIn webpage. And I've also done a few TED Talks. I did a Wired video recently. And just connect with me on LinkedIn. Find me there.
Awesome. And maybe I can get some links from you to put in the description below if you're watching this video. So that's great. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, sure. Very good catch. So, Graham, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights help us not only understand where AI is headed, but also how we, as educators, engineers, and just citizens, can shape that future responsibly. To our listeners, especially our growing community of Ukrainian AI learners, keep asking bold questions, keep building, and don't be afraid to challenge the way we've always done things. We'll be back soon with more conversations that explore the future of tech and the future of us. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, stay AI tuned.